In 2003, Nokia looked at Nintendo's Game Boy empire and decided a phone could take it down. The result was the N-Gage. Part mobile phone, part handheld console, and instantly one of the strangest gadgets of its era. It had online multiplayer, downloadable games, and ideas years ahead of their time. It also forced people to hold it sideways against their face to make calls. It became a punchline, but it was pointing at the future. At the start of the 2000s, Nokia was not just a successful phone company, it was the phone company. Its devices were everywhere. In pockets, in offices, in school bags, and on television. In some countries, owning a Nokia was almost the default setting for having a mobile phone. The company had earned that position by making phones that felt reliable, practical, and simple. Models like the Nokia 3310 became famous for long battery life, tough plastic bodies, and menus people could understand without reading a manual. Nokia made mobile technology feel normal, but phones were changing fast. They were no longer just tools for calling someone in an emergency. Text messaging had become a daily habit. Ringtones, color screens, cameras, calendars, basic web access, and music features were turning phones into personal lifestyle devices. Games were already part of that shift. Snake was simple, but it proved something important. People would play on a phone if the game was always with them. Nokia had millions of users carrying a gaming device without calling it one. From Nokia's point of view, handheld gaming looked vulnerable. Nintendo's Game Boy Advance was selling extremely well, but it was still a separate machine people had to remember to bring. A phone was already in your pocket, already charged, and already part of your daily routine. So Nokia had the brand, the money, the factories, the carriers, and the audience. It understood hardware at a global scale. If anyone could turn the mobile phone into a Nintendo killer, Nokia looked like the company to do it. So what could possibly go wrong? Nokia's answer was the N-Gage, a device announced as both a mobile phone and a serious handheld game console. It launched in 2003 with a United States price around $299, putting it directly in the territory of dedicated gaming hardware. On paper, the pitch was powerful. Instead of carrying a phone and a Game Boy Advance, you would carry one device. It could make calls, send messages, play music, and run games sold on physical memory cards. Nokia was not trying to make another tiny time waster like Snake. It wanted full handheld games with recognizable names, three-dimensional graphics, and multiplayer features. That last part mattered. The N-Gage was built around the idea that gaming would not stay isolated. Because it was a phone, it could use mobile networks and Bluetooth to connect players. Nokia imagined people challenging each other, downloading content, messaging friends, and treating games as part of their connected life, not just something played alone on the bus. This is why the N-Gage cannot be dismissed as a random corporate mistake. The basic idea was early, not stupid. Years before smartphones became the center of portable gaming, Nokia saw that the most important gaming device might eventually be the one people already carried everywhere. The problem was timing. In 2003, phone gaming was still primitive, mobile networks were expensive and limited, and most gamers judged a handheld by what they could feel immediately. The screen, the buttons, the comfort, the games, and the price. Nokia had a future-facing concept. Now it needed a physical product that could survive direct comparison with Nintendo the moment someone picked it up. Then people picked it up, and the hardware started fighting the concept. The most famous problem was the phone itself. The earpiece and microphone were placed along the thin side of the device, not on the front face like a normal mobile phone. To make a call, users had to turn the entire N-Gage sideways and press its wide edge against their head. From the outside, it looked like someone was talking into a taco. That image spread faster than any feature Nokia wanted to advertise. The side-talking look became the N-Gage's defining joke because it was instantly understandable. You did not need to know the processor, the game lineup, or the network features. One photo of someone using it as a phone made the device look awkward. The gaming side had its own problem. On the original model, the game card slot was hidden behind the back cover, underneath the battery. Changing games meant powering the device down, removing the rear shell, taking out the battery, swapping the card, putting everything back together, and restarting. For a handheld console, that was a brutal mistake. Nintendo had trained players to swap cartridges in seconds. Even the buttons showed the compromise. The front had to function as a phone keypad, so the number keys also became the game controls. There was a directional pad on one side, but the main action buttons were scattered across a layout designed for dialing. As a phone, it was wide and strange. As a game machine, it lacked the clean grip and button placement players expected. None of these flaws required a long review to understand. They were visible in the first demonstration, the first phone call, and the first game swap. Before many people seriously judged the games, the N-Gage had already become funny to look at. For a premium gadget trying to challenge Nintendo, that was deadly. The bigger problem was waiting on the store shelf. At launch, the N-Gage cost roughly $299 in the United States. That put it in premium gadget territory, not impulse buy handheld territory. A game Game Boy Advance was cheaper, simpler, and already understood by parents, kids, and retailers. You bought the Nintendo machine, bought a cartridge, and started playing. Nintendo also had something Nokia could not manufacture overnight: trust. The Game Boy line had survived for more than a decade by doing one job extremely well. By the time the N-Gage arrived, the Game Boy Advance had a deep library, familiar franchises, and strong third-party support. Players could choose from Mario, Pokémon, Zelda, Metroid, Castlevania, Final Fantasy, and dozens of licensed games that actually fit the device. The N-Gage lineup did not feel like a reason to switch. It had recognizable names, including Tony Hawk, Tomb Raider, and Sonic, but many games felt compromised by the screen shape, controls, or the fact that better versions existed somewhere else. Nokia was asking players to pay more for a machine with fewer must-have games and more friction. The market answered quickly. One brutal comparison from the American launch was repeated again and again. In the first week, the Game Boy Advance reportedly outsold the N-Gage by around 100 to 1. That number became the reality check. Gamers were not only rejecting the side-talking jokes or the battery-swapping design, they were rejecting the deal itself. Nintendo offered a cheaper handheld with a massive library and a proven identity. Nokia offered a futuristic hybrid that made simple things harder. For most buyers, that was not innovation. It was a bad trade. Once the launch numbers started circulating, the N-Gage stopped being treated like a serious Nintendo challenger and started becoming a warning label. Sales were never close to Nokia's ambitions. Depending on the source, lifetime hardware sales are usually reported somewhere around 1.5 million to under 3 million units. For a normal experimental gadget, that might not sound catastrophic. For a company trying to break into gaming, challenge the Game Boy, and prove that phones could become consoles, it was nowhere near enough. Nokia did try to respond. In 2004, it released the N-Gage QD, a revised model that fixed some of the most obvious complaints. Game cards could finally be swapped without removing the battery. The shape was more practical. The infamous side-talking design was gone. It was cheaper, smaller, and closer to what the first version should have been. But the repair arrived after the joke had already hardened. The name N-Gage no longer meant futuristic mobile gaming to most people. It meant awkward design, strange compromises, and a company that had tried to force too many ideas into one device. Even improvements could not fully separate the QD from the reputation of the original. That reputation followed it everywhere. The N-Gage became shorthand for over-designed technology failure. Ambitious, expensive, uncomfortable, and incredibly easy to mock. It was not remembered as a bold first step into mobile gaming. It was remembered as the taco phone, the side-talking phone, the thing that made you remove the battery to change games. Nokia eventually retreated from the hardware vision. The dream of one dedicated phone-console hybrid had failed in public. And that is what makes the N-Gage so strange. It was wrong in nearly every detail, but it was right about where gaming was going. The strange part is that, a few years later, the world started moving toward Nokia's idea without Nokia's hardware. Phones did become gaming devices, not niche accessories, not emergency time wasters, but the largest gaming platform on Earth. The breakthrough did not come from a dedicated game deck with a phone attached. It came from ordinary smartphones getting better screens, faster processors, mobile internet, and digital stores that made downloading a game almost effortless. That was the difference Nokia did not have. The N-Gage treated mobile games like handheld console games. You bought physical cards, paid premium prices, and accepted a device shaped around too many competing functions. Later mobile gaming removed almost all of that friction. Games were downloaded in seconds. Many were free to start. Touchscreens made the phone itself the controller. Updates, online features, and payments all lived inside the same ecosystem. The audience changed too. Nintendo was selling to people who already wanted a gaming machine. Smartphones reached people who never planned to buy one. A puzzle game, a farming game, or a quick multiplayer match could sit beside messages, music, and maps. Gaming became something built into the device people already carried every day. That is why the N-Gage feels less like a bad prediction and more like a prediction trapped in the wrong era. Nokia saw that phones and games would merge, but it tried to force that future through cartridges, awkward buttons, high prices, and early 2000 technology. The N-Gage did not kill Nintendo. It did something stranger. It failed loudly, and then watched the rest of the industry prove its basic idea right. The N-Gage was the future in the wrong body, a smartphone gaming idea squeezed into awkward hardware before the world was ready. It became a punchline, but also a prototype hiding in plain sight. Thanks for watching. Write a comment with the failed gadget you want covered next.